I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street.
Happy holidays, guys. It's that time of year again. The time where everybody rushes to Amazon to buy all their shit for all their friends and family. This year, since all of you are now my friends, I'm asking you for a favor. I don't need you to send me anything for Christmas, but I appreciate the thought. What I would like for you to do instead is to do all of your Amazon shopping through Amazon. Well, that's easy, right? I'm not asking too much. There's one thing I'm going to ask you to do. To get to Amazon, I need you to go to fascinationstreetpod.com and click on the Amazon banner on my homepage. Nothing will be any different, and then do all of your Amazon shopping as you normally would. The only difference is that you're walking in through the door that's marked Fascination Street Podcast. It tells Amazon that you love me, and they throw a couple of shekels my way for everything you purchase. That's it. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And happy holidays from Steve Owens and Fascination Street Podcast. From now until December 31st, 2018, the James Beard Foundation is accepting nominations for the 2019 James Beard Awards. And I invite all of you to join me in nominating Chef Stephen McHugh from Cured in San Antonio, Texas, for the 2019 James Beard Award for Best Chef Southwest. I've made it easy to do this, guys. If you go to fascinationstreetpod.com and look to the right of the page, there will be a photo of Chef Stephen McHugh. When you click on that photo, it will take you to the 2019 James Beard Award page. You will need to create an account, but that'll only take about 60 seconds and they don't ask for much. It's really just a name and password kind of a thing. Once you've created an account, it will take you to the nominations page. From there, you'll click on the 2019 Restaurant and Chef Awards, and then complete the submission form, making sure to select Best Chef Southwest as the category. It's that easy, guys. All it takes is 5 minutes of your time, and I would greatly appreciate it. So thank you in advance, and now let's get to this week's episode. Welcome back, folks. This is part 2 of my interview with Paul Skog. If you listened to part 1, you know that Paul Skog is an attorney in Evanston, Wyoming, who is responsible for making Evanston, Wyoming the North American training ground and headquarters for the Jamaican Bobsled Team. In this episode, we talk about Paul getting to meet Prince Albert of Monaco. We also get to continue the story of Paul's involvement with the Jamaica Bobsled Team. We talk about Paul's best friend and 4-time Olympic Jamaican bobsledder, Winston Watts. Plus, Paul talks about what a giant pain in the ass it was to raise funds to even send the Jamaica Bobsled Team to the Olympics. And we get to hear Paul's experience at being the equipment manager for the Jamaica Bobsled Team for the 2014 Olympics in Sochi, Russia. There is some static for about the first minute of this part of the interview, but it doesn't last long, and try to hang in there. Sorry about that. It was a little bit unavoidable. Enjoy, folks. This is part 2 of my interview with attorney and savior of the Jamaican Bobsled Team, Paul Skog.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
I got a phone call from a young man who said that he was a writer for Sports Illustrated, and that he had been backpacking in the Colorado Rockies, and he had seen the story about the Jamaicans coming to Evanston. And so he wanted to know the story, and I filled him in quickly. Yes, they're coming, and they'll be here in August. And he said that he had submitted the story to his editor and had already received permission to come to Evanston and write the story. And he wanted to know when a good time would be. And I told him about Cowboy Days.
What's Cowboy Days?
What you just went through the last couple of days. The Labor Day celebration. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, they have an afternoon rodeo. And you saw the parade. So I said, I think that would be a good time because we have plans to have them in the parade and we have plans to have them at the rodeo.
I was a little surprised that they weren't in the parade yesterday.
You have to remember it's 21 years, and there are people here who don't even know about them. You know?
Yeah, but one of them still lives here, and so I thought that for sure that would be a thing.
He's become a local, and people see him up at the rec center. And that's part of the problem with bobsledding is people forget about bobsledding except for the Olympics.
Right.
Unless you're European. And in Europe, watching bobsledding is like watching Monday Night Football. They go to the bars, they make bets, they drink their beer, and they have a whopping good time watching bobsledding in Europe. You know, for many of the other teams, it's every 4 years it comes out of the closet and everybody gets interested in it. And then they lose interest as soon as the Olympics turn off the lights. So for Winston, he lives here, but he's just become another town person. So the young man from Sports Illustrated, he does just that. He comes out over Labor Day weekend. And another call I got was from a producer from CNN. They wanted to come out with a film crew. At that time, and I think even today, there's CNN and Sports Illustrated are in the same big bubble company. So we had this producer and a film crew, and they came, and the writer came. We ended up with a 2-page story in Sports Illustrated. It's on the wall out there.
2 pages and the cover.
And the cover. We had a 7-minute segment in a sports show that was aired on CNN. It was a sports magazine show, and the 30-minute slot was divided into 3 7-minute segments. And we were one of those 7-minute segments. Of course, that was big news that Sports Illustrated was coming and CNN was coming. The Sports Illustrated guy wanted to meet with me, and he wanted my story. And again, I was naive. No, the story is the Jamaican Bobsled Team. And from his perspective, no, half of the story is you inviting them and where you came up with that idea. We had lunch together. He interviewed me, and his story was that he was a brand new graduate from Princeton and had been hired by Sports Illustrated. He was brand new. He said in order to make a name for yourself, you had to come up with story ideas. And that's why he had submitted this idea, and it had been approved. And he wrote the story, and that's what's hanging on the wall out there. Now, his name is Grant Wall, W-A-H-L. Grant Wall is now, 21 years later, the senior writer for Sports Illustrated, and their expert on soccer.
Really?
Yes.
How cool is that?
That is really cool. My kids, of course, they follow soccer. And it was my oldest boy who, maybe 10 years ago, pointed out that Grant Wall was a big contributor to Sports Illustrated. And then at one point, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, he pointed out to me, he says, he's their #1 man in soccer. So they trained for the Nagano Olympics, and that was Devon's team. And he was Jam 2. And so he not only got help from Evanston, but he raised his own funding to go to Nagano. And he qualified, and he went to Nagano. The other team, Team 1, was there with Chris and Tal. I don't remember what they came in. It was in the high 20s, both of them. After Nagano, Devon, who was hopeful to go to the 2002 Olympics, it just was beyond his prime. And he retired. He went to Nagano. He was thankful for all of the help that he got here. He and I still keep in touch. He now is a motivational speaker. And Chris and Tal retired as active athletes. And that brings us to Winston Watts. Now, Winston joined the team, I think, in 93. He'd been at the Nagano Games. He'd been at Lillehammer. He had gone to driving school. So Tal and Winston and something like 6 newbies show up in January. There's a driving school and there's a training school. So they're here for something like a week to 10 days. And during that period of time, they're choosing who's gonna... Winston is named the team captain. I mean, he had been to the driving school, and to be quite frank, in my opinion, Winston is the best driver that Jamaica's ever had. He's just a talented person. He really is their best driver. The other thing I forgot to tell you, a story about Devon. It was 97. It was Thanksgiving. And Devin was qualifying his team. And there was a World Cup race, and he was here for it. They'd gone on the race circuit about November 1st. And I think they went to Park City and Lake Placid and Calgary. And I think he'd gone to Calgary, and then they'd come back to Park City, and they were having this World Cup race. There's two leagues. There's the World Cup, and there's the second league, which is divided into the America's Cup and the Euro Cup. If you have the money, you race in the World Cup. If you don't have the money, you race either of the other two. But this just happened to be a World Cup that they could afford because it was right here. So Devin is here, and he's racing, and we're on the hill. And it's beautiful. There's no wind. There's no snow. It's just a beautiful evening, and the lights are on, and it's well lit. And Devin was talking to this fellow, and I was standing nearby him. And all of a sudden, he interrupts his conversation. And he says, Albert, I want you to meet this fellow. And he kind of grabbed me, turned me around. He says, this is Paul Skog. Paul Skog is from Evanston. We're up in Evanston, and we're training. And he's the fellow that got it all started. And so I shook hands with Albert. And I said to Albert, so for whom do you race? And Albert says to me, I race for Monaco. And all of a sudden, the light bulb went off. And I'm going, Monaco, Albert. And I look at Albert, and I say, by any chance, are you Prince Albert of Monaco? And he looks at me, and he kind of turns his head in rather a royal kind of a twist, lifting his chin, and he looks at me and he goes, by all chance, I am Prince Albert of Monaco.
By
all chance, I am Prince Albert of Monaco. People don't know this, but his father, Rainier, was a bobsledder and an Olympic bobsledder. And Prince Rainier was also on the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, at the same time that he was an athlete in bobsledding. And Albert was his son, and Albert made his debut in bobsledding at the 1988 Calgary Games. And of course, Albert was an underdog, and the Jamaicans were underdogs, and Albert and the Jamaicans had become acquainted and friends. And Devin was at the 88 Calgary Games, and so he knew Albert. So I got to meet Prince Albert of Monaco. And I will never forget his response, by all chance, I am Prince Albert of Monaco.
That is amazing.
It was. So anyway, now we jump forward again back to Winston. It's January of 99. The newbies are here. And I go to breakfast with Winston and the newbies. And there's one fellow, and he's sitting across from me, and his name is Lascelles Brown. And he is maybe 22 years old. And I learned later that he was a butcher in Jamaica. Now, a butcher in Jamaica is not like our butchers in the United States. A butcher in Jamaica sits on a three-legged stool next to a tin shack surrounded by a fence in which there are goats. And the Jamaican women come along and they say, I want the front quarter of that goat. And the butcher then takes that goat out behind the tin shed and butchers it on the spot, cutting off the front quarter and selling it to a Jamaican woman who would take it home for dinner. This was Lascelles Brown. And literally, other Jamaicans like Devin had been in the armed forces and had trained in cold weather. So they were used to cold weather. But Lascelles had never been off the island. And he was sitting across from me, and I remember to this day looking at him, and I remember thinking, you're not going to make it. You're just not going to make it. He ended up being the number one brakeman for Winston. And Winston built him up over the next 3 years. Winston, with his weight training program, literally built Lascelles Brown into one of the best brakeman pushers in bobsledding. So Lascelles and Winston go to the 2002 Olympics, and they place in the high 20s. But the thing that they did at the 2002 Olympics is they set the world record and the Olympic record for the push start segment of the race. That was the all-important part of the Cool Runnings movie, was to get that push start down. That's the part that I think people like most about bobsledding. They love to see that ballet of running on ice, jumping into the sled, getting down into the sled, tucking in, and then going down the hill. And that's the push start. And that's a timed section of the race.
And so is that the section that is from basically the gun to when the last man gets off the ice?
Well, it's a distance.
Oh, okay.
It's a distance. The race is cut into segments, curve 1, curve 2, curve 3. And at the beginning is the push start. And the movie, in order to qualify for Calgary and the movie, they had to be under... Well, the whole race was under 60 seconds. But the whole thing, John Candy, was they had to get it under 6 seconds, I think it was, for the push start. Well, that was for the 4-man. In the 2-man, Winston and Lascelles Brown, his nickname is King Brown, they set the track record and the Olympic record for the push start of the 2-man event at 4.78 seconds.
Wow.
And he got
And this was in 2002?
This was in 2002. Now, they came in the high 20s, but that's because they lacked proper coaching, and they also lacked the really expensive equipment. They had a Cadillac of bobsleds, and everybody else was driving Ferraris. But they proved the premise of the movie. The premise of the movie was that Jamaica has great athletes, and they proved it by setting the track record, the most athletic part of the race. They held that record for over 10 years. They held both the bobsled record and the track record down at Utah for over 10 years at 4.78 seconds. The reason I bring this up is after 2002, they raced, the town sent the team, this is number 2, to the 2002 Olympics. So they sent a team to Nagano. They sent a team to the 2002 Olympics.
In Salt Lake.
In Park City, Salt Lake. And I have to stress that the whole idea was that we had a town full of giving people. And it was the people that gave of themselves. And that's how Devin Harris got to Nagano. That's how Winston Watts got to the 2002 Olympics. And after the 2002 Olympics, they were still coming back. I thought it would be over. Our involvement, but it turns out that Evanston, Wyoming is logistically perfect for their needs. And by that I mean they could leave their $100,000 worth of equipment in my care and custody. We stored it in my back room for all those years. I mean, a sled alone is $100,000. The runners are at that time were $20,000 to $30,000. And of course now everything is probably triple what it was in 2002. And they could call me up on or about November 1st from the airport and say, can you pick us up? And there would be motel rooms here for them, and they would be getting ready for the season. And that's what they did in 2003, 4, and 5. They kept coming back, and they were getting ready for the 06 Olympics in Torino, Italy. And unfortunately, they ran out of money. Even with our assistance, and as I recall, they borrowed a sled to qualify for the Torino Olympics, and the sled turned out to be not very good, and so they did not qualify for the Torino Olympics. Much to Winston's disappointment, because 06 probably would have been his last Olympics. The team did go over. They had some contractual obligations to make appearances, so Winston did get to go to those Olympics, but he didn't get to participate in them. And in between there, in 04, he told me that he'd like to move to Evanston. He asked me if he could get work here. Now, I knew him to be from the Jamaican Defense Force. I knew that his background was heavy equipment operation, and I knew that we were having a boom going on. And I said to him, there's no doubt in my mind you'll get employment easily. So he said he was moving to Evanston, and I said, yeah, sure, call me when you get here. And he called me from the airport and asked me to come down and pick him up. And then he went on the race circuit that winter. Then he came back in 05, and that's when he became a permanent resident here in Evanston. It was 05. And he went to work for the Schlumberger. He was going to go to the 06 games, and he missed out. Now, at the same time that he was moving here, his brakeman from the '02 Olympics, Lascelles King Brown, moved to Calgary, where he had his girlfriend, and he married his girlfriend. And since then, they've produced, I think, 3 daughters. But he was living in Calgary in '03, '04, when the Canadian team came knocking and said, would you like to bobsled for Canada? Now, this was the '04-05 season. And he said, sure. Now, the track in Calgary is actually inside the city limits of Calgary. So he was like 2 miles to the track in Calgary. He began racing, and within days, he became their number 1 brakeman pusher. They linked him up with their number 1 driver, a man named Pierre Luders. Now, Pierre had won gold at Nagano. He had come in 4th in the '02 games, and so he was hungry to go to the '06 games. And he linked up with King Brown, and in the '04-05 season, they placed season gold medal for both 4-man and the 2-man.
Wow.
So they are hot to trot. They are the thing at the time. And then the '05-06, ending with Torino, season begins, and they are still cooking. They are coming in gold. They're number 1 for the season, and January of '06 comes along. And, of course, along the way, they knew that there was a minor problem. You can race for the country you live in as a resident in all of the races except the Olympics. For the Olympics, you have to be a citizen. And Lascelles Brown was something like 380 days short of qualifying for Canadian citizenship in January of '06, until the Minister of Immigration in Canada graciously waived the remaining 380 days. Lascelles was in Germany at the time racing, and he had to break away from the team, and he had to go to Munich, where there was a Canadian consulate, to stand on Canadian soil at the consulate and to be sworn in as one of Canada's newest citizens.
Wow.
So they complete the season. They go to the Torino Olympics. He walks into the Torino opening ceremonies under the Canadian flag, and he comes home with the silver medal for the 2-man race at Torino. So for the very first time, we have a Jamaican standing on the podium receiving a Winter Olympic medal.
And this is that goat butcher from back in the day.
This is the goat butcher.
Wow.
And between '06 and '10, now the '10 Olympics were at Vancouver in Canada. He became their top man. His face was on the Canadian box of Wheaties.
Oh, really?
I was going to get a box, but I never got one. But it had Lascelles King Brown on the front box of the Wheaties. So by that time, Pierre Luders is now retired. He links up with a new driver. They go to Vancouver, and they're doing the 2-man race, which was before the 4-man race. They were doing the 2-man race, and they were neck and neck. They would have come in second, but like 100 yards to the end of the race, the sled tips over. Now, they finished the race, but the time was slashed by the sled tipping over. But so he did not medal in the 2-man, but in the 4-man with his driver, Lyndon Rush, they placed third. And so he has a bronze medal from the Vancouver Games. He has a silver. The picture you were pointing at, that's the silver medal from the Torino Games.
Oh.
It looks like a giant CD.
It looks like a giant...
but it's actually about 1/4 of an inch thick. And that's the silver medal from the Torino Games. And let's see. So they don't make it to '06. They still are sending teams in '07, '08. And I think it was '07, '08 season. They're going to Vancouver. And a paper in Vancouver calls and interviews me. And talking about the team still training here. And I mentioned that it would be nice if someone in Canada would do what we had done, take the reins and give them a training base. And a small town, and I forget the name of it, attempted to do that, but things fell through and they ended up not taking the reins. But by the 2010 Olympics, there was no funding, and they did not qualify. So they missed both the 06 and the 2010 games. And now we're coming to the 2014 games. So Winston, during this time frame, has retired. He lists himself as a retired bobsledder, and he's gone to work full-time for a major oil field service company, Schlumberger, worldwide. He's making very good money. He's freezing his Rastafarian nays off in January out in the oil field. That was a line from the movie. He's freezing his Rastafarian nays off in the oil field, but he's making very good money. During this time frame, he becomes an American citizen. He does the immigration paperwork, files it with the Immigration Service to bring his mother from Jamaica. He brings in his 4 children, one at a time. The oldest one, Nicia, qualifies to go to college over in Rock Springs. I think she's the first member of their family to receive a college degree. She now works for American Airlines.
Oh, cool.
And of course, I don't know, did you meet Romain, his boy?
I haven't met him or any of them.
Oh, okay.
I haven't met anybody.
Well, he's brought his mother. Romain now lives he had a set of twins, Romain and Romania. Anyway, she came for a while, but she moved to Florida because that's where her mother lived. Romain still lives here. He works for an oilfield service company and makes very good money. But by 2011, the oil field that Winston was working in, called the Jonah Field, busts. I mean, it was booming, and they were pumping natural gas, and he was making a terrific living. You know, he was set. He was the American dream. He had come to America and basically was living the American dream. And all of a sudden, the oil field industry just goes bust. And slowly but surely, it just closes down up there. Gasoline drops from $4 a gallon down to $2 a gallon. And people are being laid off. This town suffers. Now, Winston, he could have stayed with Schlumberger. He could have been moved to any of their fields around the world. They do things like 30 days on and 30 days off, things like that. And he chose not to do that. And he looked for other work and eventually went to work for the Wyoming State Hospital. But before he went to work for the state hospital, he was essentially unemployed. This was now like 2011, 2012. And he's still in contact with all of his old bobsledding buddies. The Vancouver games have come and gone. And next up in 14 is the Russian Olympics in Sochi. And he comes to me and he says, Paul, no one has been racing for Jamaica at the last 2 Olympics. And I have been laid off. And I have put money aside in my savings account. And I'm receiving these checks. And he has a check in his hand. And it's his unemployment check. And he says, I'm receiving these checks. I'm unemployed. I'm coming out of retirement. And I'm going to the Sochi Russia Olympics. Now, by this time, he and I have become very close friends. I mean, he moved here in 2004. I'm his confidant. I'm his lawyer. I'm his accountant. And we have become the closest of friends. And his other hobby was working on cars. He helps me with my cars. So 2012, and he says that he's going to Sochi, Russia. And I know that he's going to be 46 years old in 2014. And I look at him and I say, yeah, sure. Call me when you get there. And he looks at me and he says, Paul, when I go to Sochi, you're coming with me. You've been involved with the Jamaican team for 14 or 15 years, and you should come to the Olympics. And again, I responded, yeah, sure. I'll see you at the Olympics or something like that. He had been in contact with various people in bobsledding. I mean, let's face it, the Jamaican Bobsled Team is the biggest name in bobsledding in terms of recognition.
Pop culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know who... I've forgotten who won the gold medal. No, I know who won in Russia. It was a Russian. But they bring attention to bobsledding. In fact, they brought so much attention to bobsledding that now they face this qualification. Back in 88, there was plenty of room just to step in and bobsled at the Olympics. And now I've seen an Israeli bobsled team 1 year. I've seen the U.S. Virgin Island bobsled team. I've seen Mexico. Mexico's sponsor was the hairdresser, Paul Mitchell. He's Mexican. For about 8 years, he sponsored the Mexican team. And they actually became a product of their own popularity.
A victim of it.
A victim of it, exactly. Because then they have to limit it to 30 to get the time slot. So they came up with qualifications. And so they didn't qualify for the Torino Games. They didn't have money to even try for the Vancouver Games. So here's Winston, and he says he's going to Russia. And we're 2 years out. He's calculated out what he needs to do to qualify. You have to race at so many races. You have to come in so many places, and you get points. And so he goes racing in 12 and 13, 2 men.
Who was his brakeman?
He was in contact with the Federation, and the Federation set him up with Marvin Dixon. I think they sent 2 or 3 people, and Marvin proved to be the best, and Marvin stuck with him, and that's what came to pass. So mid-January of 14, it's like Thursday, and on the next coming Monday, the World Bobsleigh Organization would be releasing the qualifying teams, the 30 qualifying teams for the Olympics. And somehow the Russian officials and NBC get the list ahead of time. And Winston is number 30 on the list of 30. Now, of course, somebody at NBC and in Russia recognized the publicity potential. And NBC announces to the world, they get a hold of Winston. We understand that you're on the qualifying list. We understand that you're number 30.
And this was the first he had heard of it?
He had heard of it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, this is Thursday before it would be officially announced.
Got you.
And Winston tells NBC, he says, yes, I understand that I'm number 30. And I'm very thankful for that. But I have a problem. And my problem is I've run out of money. I was financing most of this on my own from my own savings and from my unemployment checks. And I'm not sure how I'm going to get to Sochi, Russia. So NBC runs a big, huge story about the Jamaican Bobsled Team is back, is how they phrase it. Now, Winston and I had always looked at it, well, the Jamaicans had missed 2 Olympics. NBC put the twist on it. There haven't been Jamaicans at an Olympics in 12 years. Okay, since 2002.
Sure.
And so they've got their marketing people on it, is the way I looked at it. And, you know, it's reading, this is the second coming of the Jamaican Bobsled Team. And they're back. They haven't been at the Olympics in 12 years. And they put this spin on it, and it's on the internet by Friday. And I think that was like January 15th, as I recall. And by Saturday, we're reading stories that there are companies on the internet, and I'd not realize this, there are professional companies who do fundraising for other people. You sign a contract with them, they do the fundraising, they keep a percentage, and they put the money in the bank for you. Well, these companies on their own decide to start raising money for the Jamaican Bobsled Team. There's no contract. In fact, I get a call from Chris in Jamaica. What's going on? Did you talk to these people? Why are they collecting money for us? I said, none of us have talked, neither Winston nor I. It's my understanding they just started collecting on their own. So Winston had told NBC that he needed $80,000. That was in the story. They needed $80,000. And I think by Monday or Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday, the company, the main company that was doing this, gets a hold of Winston and says, we have collected $120,000 for your trip to Sochi, Russia. And that's money in the bank because these people have put it on their credit cards. You can count on it. The money is here. You have $120,000. So we had a conference call with Chris and with Tao and Winston, and we put out the word, thank you very much. We don't want to seem greedy, but we've reached our goal. And so on Wednesday, about the 18th of January, Winston comes to me and he says, Paul, I think we can make our airline reservations now.
So you win.
So I went. As you know, I suffer from peripheral neuropathy. At times, it really bothers me. I can walk about 2 blocks. And the thought of going to Russia initially did not appeal to me. And Winston was on me. You got to go to Russia. And I actually initially turned him down. I just don't want to do it. My feet hurt. And I was talking with a friend and with my wife. The friend was a professor of my son. She was his mentor, and we were having dinner with her. She was telling us stories about our son, how he was 4.0 in philosophy, and we were hearing about some of the things he did in college, and she was learning about my association with the Jamaican Bobsled Team, and she learned that I was, asked to go to Russia, that I'd turned it down. And she looked at me and she said, Paul, you should go to Russia. Your feet are going to hurt whether you're sitting in your easy chair watching the Olympics on TV or whether you're actually there. They're going to hurt. It's a chance of a lifetime. You really need to go to Russia. And I don't know how it was that she said it, but at that moment she convinced me to blame it on my feet just wasn't the right thing to do. Winston was my best friend. He wanted me there. So we got done with dinner. And I texted him. I said, is it too late to change my mind about going to Russia? And he wrote back, LOL. And I wrote back to him, no, seriously, I've changed my mind. Can I still go to Russia? And he wrote back, you are my best friend. You are always welcome to come wherever I go. And so that's how I ended up going to Russia. Now, Winston told us that at the 2002 games, they had a room to themselves. They had a queen-size bed, and they were just in nothing but luxury at the 2002 Olympics. And he described this as how the Russian Olympics were going to be. Of course, I'm designated as the equipment manager. Of course, the first thing we do is lose our equipment.
Good job, buddy.
Yes.
What equipment? Are we talking like an entire sled?
No, not the sled. The sled was there ahead of time. The sled went with a group of sleds from Park City, just our luggage. And what happened was we flew on Delta from Salt Lake City to JFK. And they were having snowstorms in JFK, coming and going. Traffic was being rerouted. We got routed to Philadelphia, where we landed and loaded with fuel, and then flew to JFK, and we finally landed. And we were 4 hours late. And the Delta employee, Jamaican, is asking what's going on. And Winston explains to her that he's the team captain of the Jamaican Bobsled Team, that their plane was waylaid by 4 hours, that they've already missed the Delta flight to Moscow, and that he has to get to Moscow in order to get to the Olympics. To this day, I'll never forget this woman in the Delta uniform, Jamaican. She simply turns to the other woman and says, I'm helping this person. You get back in line. And then she takes Winston and us, takes us from the line to a side door to the help desk. And we're standing by the help desk, and I could see in. And I've never seen a woman type faster than this woman. She was on the keyboard, and it was just, she was just going nuts on the keyboard. And she shouts out to us. She says, oh, there's a Delta flight to Moscow, but it's already left. You've missed it. And we kind of knew that. And she says, let me keep looking. And she's just typing like crazy. And all of a sudden she shouts out again. She says, there's a Aeroflot, a Russian flight, and they haven't left yet. And I can get you on that. Give me your tickets. And so we all dig around and we hand her the tickets. And she's just going like crazy, typing like crazy. She gets done and she jumps out of her chair. She comes through the door. Follow me. And she takes us to a security doorway. And she swipes her card. We go through the doorway. We go down a set of stairs. We go down an escalator. And we're at ground level. And she swipes her card again, and we're on the tarmac. We're carrying our stuff. She's saying, come on, come on, come on. And we are out on the tarmac at JFK. And Winston, he's looking at me like a big brother. You know, are your feet okay? Are your feet okay? I'm doing fine. Let's just go. Let's just go. And we walk across over to another concourse. And there's the door. She swipes her card. We go through the security door. We're inside. We ride the escalator up one flight. Then we have to take a stairs up. She swipes her card again. And we're on the concourse. And there's the Aeroflot. And we are there just in time to learn that they've been delayed because of the snow and that they're handing out free dinner tickets to take to the various restaurants along the concourse. So we thank her profusely for everything that she has done for us. I'll never forget her and all of the help that she gave us. And so we settled in, we got our dinner, and we waited for the flight. The flight we got on, and we were headed to Moscow. And, of course, we changed planes at Moscow. We fly from Moscow to Sochi. I think the entire trip took like 20 hours, if I recall correctly. But, you know, you're sleeping during a lot of that, kind of lose track of what's going on. But we get to Sochi, and we land at Sochi. We're in the baggage claim area. Now, the baggage claim area was separated from the rest of the airport by a frosty glass wall with a frosty glass door in the middle of it. And as you took your baggage, you would go through the door and out into the main area of the airport. And we're standing there, and there's a whole group, and obviously a whole group of Olympic athletes, and the carousels are going around, and luggage is being taken. Our luggage isn't there, and they're going around, and there's less and less luggage. People are leaving. Everybody's leaving. It's also, we'd also signed up. There was a desk where we signed up as the team arriving. And suddenly there is no more luggage. And after a minute or two, the carousels stop. And of course, I look at Winston and I say, I think they lost our luggage. And so we walk over to this counter and we explain that we're the Jamaican Bobsled Team and our luggage is missing and what do we do? And we end up filling out some forms. And with just our carry-on, we go through the frosty glass door. And this had taken 45 minutes to an hour. And we get out there, and there is Chris Stokes. And he is standing with a news team from NBC. They've been waiting for 45 minutes to an hour for the Jamaican Bobsled Team to come through the glass door. And I think I was in the lead. And I get this microphone stuck in my face. And you're with the Jamaican Bobsled Team? Yes. Well, how were the flights? And I was grumpy. And I said, well, they lost our luggage. And we became the news cycle. We were suddenly the news cycle for the next 24 hours. Jamaican Bobsled Team arrives in Sochi without their luggage. And, of course, they located it. It was sitting on the tarmac in JFK. Of course. And it came in the next day. But, you know, everything we did at the Sochi Olympics became the news cycle for the day. And Winston did miss out on an extra day of training because he didn't have his spikes. And I just think it was funny that I was officially listed as a Jamaican delegate as the equipment manager, and the first thing I did was I lost the equipment. So
that is awesome. But I like the second thing you did was to get in front of a camera and then blast Delta immediately. That is awesome.
One last story for you, at least I think it's the last story. We were in Athletic Village, the Athlete Village, and the Athlete Village was strictly security, concertina wire, armed guards. But we could get on a gondola at the Athlete Village, and we could ride the gondola down to the public village, the public ski village. And the ski village at Sochi was divided by a small river, very much like the Bear River up there where you were yesterday. And what they'd done was this was brand new. Everything was brand new. They carved it out of the forest. And then they had built bridges so that people could cross over. And I had gone down to the public village by myself. I was looking for souvenirs for my wife and kids. And I happened to be crossing one of the bridges. There was a young lady, a news reporter, sports reporter, with a microphone and a camera crew. She was interviewing, there were two sisters, I believe, who placed gold and silver in one of the downhill ski events. And she was interviewing them. And I was standing there watching the interview, 10, 15 feet away. I was just watching it. And all of a sudden, I feel a tap on my shoulder. And I turn around, and there is an Asian fellow. And he has a microphone in his hand. And he says to me, he says, are you from Jamaica? And I said, well, I'm not from Jamaica, but I'm part of the Jamaican Bobsled Team. I had a coat on that had the logo. And that's why he had tapped me on the shoulder. And I look past him and I see that there's a film crew with him. And when I tell him that I'm a member of the Jamaican Bobsled Team, he kind of goes berserk. You part of the team? You part of the team? Can we interview you? And I was all alone. This was like the first time I wasn't with Winston. Winston, of course, always took the interviews. And I stood by the side. And of course, what went through my mind was, I'm all alone. Yeah, you can interview me. So this fellow, he steps up, the crew comes up, and they're filming. He got to a question, he says, so how are the team members? How, athletically, how are they? I don't know where I came up with this, but I held up my arm like Popeye the Sailor, and like he did to make his muscle, and I pointed to my arm like this, and I said, our guys are strong as bulls. I guess it was the way I said it. Our guys are strong like bulls. The entire video crew broke into laughter. And they were all standing there laughing when I said that. And all I could think of at the time was, I'm going to be on Japanese TV somewhere in the world. I never could locate that interview.
How'd they do at the Olympics?
They came in 29th. Again, it all goes back to the concept. There's a line in the movie from John Candy. He walks into the organization, the Bobsled World Organization. They've just disqualified the Jamaicans in the movie. And they've done it because John Candy plays the role of a disgraced bobsledder. He had cheated and his gold medals had been taken away, so they don't like John Candy's character. But he comes into this meeting and he talks to them. And the one line that still makes the hairs on my neck rise, he looks at them and he says, it is the greatest single honor for any athlete to have, to be able to walk in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. And you all have forgotten that. You're taking it out on my guys because of what I did. I'll quit. Just let them have that honor of walking into the Olympics. And that always sticks with me. And for Winston, he was 46 years old. This was his fourth Olympics. It was extremely important for him to be there. I don't keep track of who won or who lost. It was the winning was being there. Not coming in first, not coming in second, not coming in third, not standing on the podium.
Did you feel like it was a fitting conclusion to your part of the story? That you got to go and witness, arguably Winston's last run?
Well, yeah. At that time, it was. Since then, Winston and I sat around watching the Korean Olympics back in February. And since February, Winston has been talking about going to Beijing in 2022.
Has any athlete in any sport ever appeared in 5 Olympics?
Oh, I'm sure they have, but
spread over a 80-year period or whatever this is?
I honestly don't know. You're going to have an opportunity to talk with him. I've never met a man who I so admire as Winston. He has a work ethic that doesn't quit. He has a great personality. I just know I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. If Winston says I'm going to Beijing, and if he says, and you're coming with me, this time I'm saying, I believe you. Let's start making the airline reservations now so we get the good fares. I mean,
it's got to be cheaper if you buy it 4 years in advance, right?
he has more than once said, I'm thinking of going to the Beijing Olympics. I think one of the reasons people like the Cool Runnings movie is the four characters they have are so stereotypical Jamaican. They're happy, they're jolly, they talk in their accent, and people just fall in love with them. And like every society, not everybody is like that. I've met grumpy Jamaicans. I've met happy Jamaicans. Winston is on the happy side. He has a great accent. Their language, their day-to-day language is called patois. And it is pidgin language made up of various cultures. And then that becomes, when they talk the Queen's English, as they say, that's part of the accent that comes out. I think accents just interest people. I mean, a person has an English accent. Everybody notices the English accent. Everybody notices the Southern accent. And, of course, everybody notices the Jamaican accent. But it's his work ethic. He got to where he is because he put a lot of work in. But what I know about Winston Watts is his brain is a sponge. He just soaks up information. And that's why he went to the Russian Olympics. He talked with people, and people in bobsledding said, everybody loves it when the Jamaicans are there. And the United States Bobsled offered him resources. The world, at that time it was known as the FIBT, they offered some resources. And I think they would love to have him back at the 2022 Olympics in Beijing. And if anybody can do it, Winston can do it. Of course, he has a son, Romain, and Romain, his nickname is Biggs. Now, the reason his nickname is Biggs is he is bigger than Winston. He's taller than Winston, and that's why his nickname became Biggs. What I would like to see is Winston and Lascelles Brown, who's now retired from the Canadian team, and Romain. I would like to see that team. The thing about Winston and the Jamaican Bobsled team, the mark that he made, I truly feel that he's the one that developed the weightlifting program that zeroed in on those precise muscles that give you that quick, explosive start, which is why he and Lascelles set the world record. It's why Lascelles went on to become a top Canadian bobsledder. And Winston proved that it doesn't matter how old you are, it matters how much weightlifting you do, because he was there and he was still pushing fast. I don't know what his start time was in Russia, but I know it was up there. And what he's proving is, as long as you're doing the weight training on a day-by-day basis, and as long as you stick to it, you can do the same thing you did at the 14 games, and he'll be 54 at the 2022 game. He works out every day. And I've known King Brown long enough that I know that he could do the same thing. That's why I don't put it past him to be at Beijing.
Well, that is fantastic. I can't wait to see...
I can't either.
Paul Skog, thank you so much for strolling down Fascination Street with me. I really appreciate it.
It's been a fascinating 21 years. It blows me away to think that I've been involved with the Jamaican Bobsled Team for 21 years.
And all on a whim.
Yeah. I just wanted to promote the town of Evanston.
You woke up one day and had a crazy thought, and then here we are 21 years later.
Yeah.
And beyond, potentially.
Yeah, and beyond.
Plus, you got a lifelong friend out of this.
Oh, yeah.
Several, it sounds like.
Several.
It's very, very cool.
I have a Jamaican community here now in Evanston. Of course, Winston has brought his family. Winston went to work for the state hospital. He did some video presentations for the state of Wyoming Human Resources.
Oh, okay.
And, of course, the state hospital needs nurses, so they contract for nurses. Right now, there are at least 3 nurses from Jamaica who have come to Evanston. They brought their spouses and their children. That just happened in the last 6 to 9 months. So there's and of course, the first person they meet at the state hospital is Winston. So there's now really a small Jamaican community here in Evanston.
Little Jamaica.
Little Jamaica.
How cool is that?
Absolutely right.
Winston Watts, the mayor of Little Jamaica. Very cool. Again, Paul Skog, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This was a delight.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
I hope it works out.
Hey guys, this is Steve Owens from Fascination Street Podcast here with a very important message. I'm awesome. I bet you thought I was going to say something else, but nope, What's important here is that I am awesome. I started this show because I truly believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear those stories. In the short time I've been doing this show, I've interviewed actors, directors, writers, inventors, podcasters, musicians, pro athletes, Olympic athletes, actual war heroes, even a Bond girl and a luthier, whatever the hell that is, and of course, regular people. From people who wanted to be stars but never gave it a real try, to big company CEOs and people who got to meet their favorite president. I love getting to meet and speak with people who have a story to tell. I feel like everyone does, and it's my job to get them to tell it. You never know who my next guest will be. An Academy Award-winning actor, a platinum-selling musician, or your own mother-in-law. But one thing is for certain, you will be fascinated by their story. So come take a walk with me down Fascination Street. You can find Fascination Street Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and of course, FascinationStreetPod.com.
Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.